Now the backstop and carry assembly has been removed, you can see that there's quite a bit of free space in here. A lot of important things just came out. Now the next pin I have to remove is inside this spacer here. Right? Now the spacer itself is not coming off, just the pin. This is what holds the accumulator assembly. And again, things are going to start to fall free as I do this, so you're going to need to pay attention and do it slowly. And see the pin coming out right over here. Now do this slowly, one column at a time, so that as things drop, you can pick them up and bag them. Now, I can't actually see the pin as it's coming free, so I'm going to nudge these parts out of the way. Not quite yet. You can kind of feel when it's going up against another frame piece, but it's not always easy to tell exactly where you are because you cannot see the pin. So it's just going to take a little bit to figure out. Oh, there we go. So you need to raise this up here. And that will release the wheel and allow everything to fall away, I hope. Here we go. There we go. Little work, little gentle persuasion, and things do come free. So let me take care of the rest of those. Now that I have the last one of these free, I want to show you something about this. So this is part of a ratchet and pawl setup. And it's part of the carry assembly and the overall action, really. This connects into the intermediate gear. This connects into the pawl and backstop for doing the carry. And this, if you spin it around, you may not be able to hear it, but you can feel that there's a little ratchet in it. You can actually lift this off. And you'll note that the center bit here comes out too, but I don't advise actually separating that if you don't need to. You can see the ratchet system here. So as the wheel turns, parts pivot, and that prevents it turning back the wrong way. So put it back on here. That prevents the wheel from moving the wrong direction. Now that I have the accumulator assembly out, you can see that that is the guts of everything is up front. Everything now remains back behind. The only exception are a couple of springs here for the subtraction cutoff knobs, and we'll take those out in a little bit. Now, more importantly, you can see the rack that drives everything. This here is the heart of the system, as it provides all the motive force for the operation. Now, as I push a button down, you can see that the ratchet or the rack drops a certain amount. That is proportional to the number on the key. You can remember each of these key stems is different length, and each one drops that a different amount in order to advance the counter the appropriate distance. Remember, all of this is to drive the little number wheel forward a particular number of positions. That's the whole goal of each column, to put the number wheel in the right position. And to transfer the input from the keys over to the accumulator. so that we can register the display. That's the whole goal of what is going on here. The only difference is making sure we don't overshoot, making sure that we stop when we're supposed to, and the control system to make sure that we press the keys completely and not try to do two in the same column, and the clearing assembly to put us back to 0. Now that we have the rock frame and the accumulator bits removed, it's time to go to the right-hand support plate. To do that, first requires removing everything that is attached to it, or at least disconnecting it, so that it will come free. The first bit of that is this rod right here. Now, it has there's a little retaining arm here that fits into a groove in this little bar. If you look carefully, slide the camera over just a bit so you can see it. Here's the bell, and here is the bell hammer. Now if I tap on this, you can hear the bell ring. So I am going to lift this up and then push this from the other side to get it free, and then slide it out. Doesn't move with any difficulty, it's just small and hard to grab onto. There's nothing else attached to it, so there's nothing going to fall off when we take this away, except for another little groove that I have to get past. Okay, next thing we need to do is to disconnect this spring here. Other pair of pliers. Gently. Then we're going to pull the bell hammer out, if I can grab onto it. And there we go. See the hammerhead right here. So this was sitting inside the pin. This spring here loaded it. The next thing we need to do is to move up the unit. So you follow this up here, and you can see these springs. You will note, maybe my flashlight, never used a tricolor flashlight for repairs. There are 3 springs here. I kind of strongly advise taking a pair of pictures of them so that you can figure out where they attach to and what order they're in. You can also see a small torsion spring here and the attachment points right here. Now, to move on further, we need to remove this spring from this point. The next bit is hard to see on camera. I'm going to try. Let me take it off the tripod. If you look, see if I can get this. It might be easier to show it from up above. Okay, see if I can focus this. You see that little bit there? What we have is a spring connected to the shaft down here, and the method of connection is via a tapered opening. To better illustrate that, what you can think of is, you know, those little bits that you put together where you have to slide a button through a big hole and then slide it left or right into a smaller hole? Well, that is exactly how that bit here is attached on the end of that spring. So you have to get a pair of pliers, lift it up, and then pull it free. And it's attached to moving parts, so I'm going to pause and do that and then get back to you. All right, now that I have that out, you can see what I was talking about. So you have the large hole here and the small hole here, the small slot there, which attaches to the end of a frame or at the end of a pin. So what you do to get it apart is you grab it down here and then you lift it, slide it off to the left, and there's not much room, just enough for it to get by, and then the spring will come free. Now the machine's on its left side. The next step is to remove the screws attached to the frame plate. One thing about slotted screws is that you never quite seem to find the right screwdriver to fit the slot. This one works well enough here. That one's in very tight. There is a washer behind it. So let's set that back. This one, however, is a different matter. Let me see what I've got. So when you end up with this situation, what you want to do is find the broadest, widest screwdriver you can to fit in that slot and press so that you don't press as hard as you can so that you don't cam out of the slot. The width of the slot is more important than getting something to fill the length of the slot, although there is limit. It was also very tight. Nothing there. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and I'm going to pay very careful attention to which screw goes where and make some notations. I have here a set of bags with letters on them according to the diagram which I got from John Wolf's website, which are lettered according to the bits on his diagram that show the various tie and support rods. Now, note there's no I, because I's can be confusing, so you can skip that bag, but I highly recommend getting, well, it's actually mandatory to have these lettered bags in order to be able to put everything in the right spot. And as noted, if you have something with a washer in it, it's a good idea probably to tape that up so the washer stays with the screw, or at the very least note the fact that the screw has a washer on the diagram. The screws are out. Now it's time to try to get this plate free of the tie rods. It's a little light leverage. Seems to be doing the trick. All right, there we go. Now what we have left on here, this is where the clearing crank goes. This is its return spring. Lever to set the pivot point so the spring draws linearly. The ratchet to make sure that you do a full stroke. And then, let's see, I think this is on here. And then this, so we have a stop here. And then this, I believe, is what actuates the actual clearing by pushing the rock crank forward and releasing the gears and allowing the springs to do their job. So the next step is to take all this stuff off the frame. So I actually ended up skipping a little ahead there. Taking apart the clearing handle mechanism was actually further on the process, but that's okay. So as you can see, when I pulled the frame plate off, some more parts are starting to dangle free. We'll remove these in a minute. The next order of business, though, is that there are some spacers here, 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that have these come off, and you need to make sure that you get the right spacer in the right bag. One important note here, these are fitted to the particular shaft, and they may also be of a slightly different width from each other. So to get the machine to go back in the way it's supposed to, you need to make sure you get these things back onto the right spot. Now these here, and here may be hard to see here, but they are actually threaded, so they are not going to simply slide off. These others could be lost in the process, so we need to get them accounted for and properly store them. And that should be done according to the lettered bags, which I spoke about just a little bit ago. So this unit is sitting in a little hole here, and you have to be able to lift that out. Then you can easily pull it out and remove it and set it aside. Now the machine on end again, I'm going to remove this screw. Taking this out here is the next step, and that will require a pin punch. And the one I'm using here is a 1/8 punch, and it seems to be just about the right size. Of course, I'm using your standard non-marring mallet to be able to get that come out. It's still fairly hard, but it is coming by hand now. There we go. Now, you need to get all the spacers associated with it and any other bits that come loose and make sure that they are properly recovered. So there's a very short spacer here that goes right on the end where the shaft that I pulled out goes. Got to make sure you grab that. You may have to spread this apart just a little bit to get it. And that goes in the appropriate letter bag for the tie rod. It may be that there's some shims or spaces in there as well, and if there are, in addition to that little spacer, you need to very carefully note the position of those and record those properly and make sure that you store everything in the appropriate linear order. Now that I have all these spaces out, I want to point out one other thing. This little bit here is attached as part of this column. So one of the reasons you need to make sure you get the spacers back in the right spot, because this one is not going to be the same length as this one. And depending on how the machine's been maintained, there may be shims or other things in here to adjust the spacing of the frame in order to make sure everything functions correctly. So here's where copious photographs of the disassembly come into play. And that's part of the reason I'm recording these videos, so that I have this for my own record. I wanted to take a moment here and point out something extremely important. This looks like an ordinary spacer that you took out of any other column, right? Not quite. You see on this side here, this little dimple or whatever you want to call it, that is a shim to adjust the spacing. Now, you're going to find a few of these as you take the unit apart. You can see that there's a little remnant here from where the dirt accumulated next to the shim itself. However, if I take just a moment here, you're going to see that as I clean this, well, now it's almost gone. So the indication of which side the shim came off of is not going to be present. Now, I don't expect it should really matter which side it goes on, but if you lose one of these shims in your wash water and then discover it a couple of columns later, well, you've got a problem. So this is something that's very important to pay attention to as you're taking the unit apart and as you're cleaning things. Watch out for shims. With the machine back on end, the next thing to do is to get this assembly out. Now, it's not on a removable pin. It's necessary to spread out the frame here and extract it. There we go. So here we go. There's that assembly. For now, these springs can remain attached to it. Doesn't do any harm. This is the toggle link lever. And remember that the bell hammer was attached to this as well. So set this aside and we should be done with the support plate and the associated mechanisms. Now we go on to the fun bit, being able to remove the keys and the key plate. The next step in disassembling the Comptometer, now that I've got the machine on its back again, is to begin taking the key springs off and the key pieces in the back. Now, something to note here, the springs are not necessarily the same all the way down. In fact, you can tell visually that this spring is a lot bigger than that spring. So you will need to measure the diameter of each of these springs as you go down the rows and record which one is at which diameter. Now the springs are fairly easily dislodged. I'll zoom in here so I can show you one. So I'm just going to do one here in the middle just to show you. So the spring is hooked under this little bit here, and you can see that it repeats all the way down. So I like these angle pliers, so that's why I'm using them. This is also a place where glasses are handy because springs can tend to fly loose. So very easily, you simply pull them down and lift them up out of that piece. And they will come off of the key piece here as you begin to remove things. Now, you should work straight down. I just did this one just to show you as an example. Now, if you have the proper tools, it can help to measure the diameter of the spring more accurately for you. So this here, if I can keep it in the anvil, so we're at 0.25 plus, looks like 3, maybe 4, so 0.0258. Now let's do one of these down here just to show you. I'll go over here on the end. this one here. Measures that. Yeah, so we're actually at 0.035. So 0.028, zoom back out a bit. .028 on this one here, and 0.035 on this one here. So just know that these are in different diameters. You need to carefully record which one is which. So this is row 1. This is the front of the machine. So this is the first row, and this is the 9th row. Record them carefully as you proceed. And I'll also make out here. Let me slide the camera over just a little bit so I can show you. Put it back where it belongs. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a micrometer. I like precision instruments, so I bought them. This is a digital caliper here. It will read down to a 10,000th of an inch. So this reads 0.026 and 0.032. Okay, so the micrometer is a little off a bit, or I measured a different spot in the spring. You don't need expensive tools. I have a vernier here because I like the verniers. Dials can go wonky on you, batteries can fail, electronics can fail, a vernier won't. Now these are, as I said, these are kind of expensive calipers, but that was my preference. You can also go with a dial here, which is a little bit easier to read. So we know, rolling out the first mark, so this is 0.02, this one reads just a little bit below 7. Here it reads a little bit below 33, so about 32 and a half. So you can get easy results with those too. But you don't need to spend a lot of money. This is a Lyman caliper I bought some time back. It will read down to 1,000th of an inch rather than 10,000ths. Come on. But it gives you just as accurate results. Now for the pièce de résistance. This I bought at Ace Hardware. I needed it to measure the diameter of springs and wires and so forth, to get the right gauges and right replacements. I think I picked this up for 20 bucks. It will only read down to 1,000th of an inch, but you can see there's still a vernier here. So you can see that, and it's a little hard to tell on this one. It's been in my bag a while and beaten up. I actually had to go find it. Looking at this, it looks like we're just a little below the 3rd mark on the vernier. So just a little below 0.03. This is obviously not going to be as accurate as these others, but it just goes to show that these days with the manufacturing we have, you don't need to have a lot of money invested in tools in order to get good results. So I'm going to take off all the springs, record them, and place them in their appropriate bag. And when we put them back in, we're going to want to measure them to make sure we put the right spring in the right place. That is going to take a while. There are a lot of springs on here. 12 rows, 9 keys each. So you do the math. Oh, one more important note I want to make before I move on. Now when I turn this machine over, I turned it over this way. So that means row 1 is over here, or column 1 is over here, and column 12 is over here. Please make sure, if you do this, that you remember which column is where. And the other problem is, if you turn it around this way, okay, fine, except now the 1 key is up here and the 9 key is down here. So please make sure that you know exactly where you are, exactly what orientation you're in, and that you don't mark things down in the wrong place. I also want you to note that I have a light bit of padding underneath the unit, and I'm handling it very gently because I don't want to snap off any more of the key tops that are already busted. All right, now that I've got all the springs off the first row, I can tell you that on mine, 1 and 2 are 0.032, and all the rest are roughly 0.02526. So because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to measure the springs to find the thick ones, when I put it back together, I'm going to tape these together before I put them in the bag. Now that I have all the springs out, that took about 20 minutes, which I condensed into the length of a pause button. It's time to take out the key pieces. Now, I want to point something out here. Over here, there's nothing in this column, so there's just this one tail. Over here, you notice that they're both in the same slot, and they overlapped this column over that column. So, just to show you, let's get this one out here. Bring it up. Should fairly easily remove. Next one, and pull out of the slot here, and while you're doing that, it'll come off the key top. These were originally uniform through the entire machine. Some of them may have been worked on in the field, but since they're easily adjusted, they can all be stored in one big bag. Now that I have all the key stops out, or the key pieces out, nice collection there, just wanted to show you what was left of the machine. We are at this point halfway through the disassembly, a little bit more. Now I know what you're thinking, only half. Well, the really complicated stuff is for the most part done. Just thought it was time to relax for a little bit. I mean, take it from master. Take a load off, take a rest, come back refreshed, invigorated, and ready to resume. Yeah, that's right.